and welcome back to 155 Books. My name is Shannon and today I'm going to be sharing with you the 5 books that really made an impact on me in 2023. So I'll be sharing these in the order in which I read them throughout the year, and the first one I've got to talk about I'm actually really excited about because it's one that I don't think I've seen anyone else talk about, and it's a poetry collection called You'll Never Walk Alone. Poems for Life's Ups and Downs by Rachel Kelly. So this is, like I say, a sort of anthology of poems, but what's really, really beautiful about this is that it's split up into these seasons, but they are also split into sort of emotions and how the different seasons can bring up different emotions for you. And this was actually a Christmas present from my mum for me last year, so I started reading it as soon as the year started in 2023, and I'm so glad I started reading it at the beginning of the year because obviously, like I say, the poems start with winter as the first season, and to be honest, at the beginning of the year I was kind of a bit down, and that's the mood for winter. So the seasons are winter, time for sadness; spring, time for hope; summer, time for joy; and autumn, time for reflection. So by the time I'd made it through these poems, it was the end of winter, coming into spring, and I'd already read all through the poems and the seasons and gone through these different emotions. Another thing that's really lovely about this is that you've got the poems and then you've also got Rachel Kelly's sort of like reason for picking the poem, and also maybe a little bit of explanation about what some of the poems are about. So if you're new to poetry, then this is one I would definitely recommend to you because, like I say, Rachel Kelly does this wonderful explanation of, you know, what emotions and what things are happening in the poems if, you know, you find it a bit difficult to pick that out yourself. So altogether there are 52 poems in this, and also I wanted to share with you the beautiful kind of like illustrations as well to go along with the seasons. This has definitely quickly become one of my most prized possessions, and I was really, really excited about sharing this beautiful book in this video with you all for quite a long time. The next book on this list is one that really surprised me in 2023. I kind of went into it expecting just a sort of myth retelling situation and came out reading it with so much more. And it was definitely one of the best books I've read this year, but also, like I say, made a massive impact on me, and that is Medusa by Jessie Burton. As you might expect, this one is a myth retelling about Medusa, but it's sort of targeted at young adult audiences. The reason why this one has really made an impact on me, or at the time when I read it really made an impact on me, is because throughout the year, or for the majority of the year, I had been really struggling with sort of like my self-esteem, and I don't know why, it just kind of came out of nowhere, and it was just something that just kept reoccurring throughout the year. I kind of felt like I would be okay, and then suddenly out of nowhere something very small would kind of like trigger something in my brain. So it's something that, like I say, I've been trying to deal with for the majority of this year, and this book kind of really helped me with that because Jessie Burton kind of does this really clever and nice thing, I guess, through the retelling of Medusa's story, that kind of makes Medusa reflect on the things that have happened to her in a sort of I'm better than that kind of way. So at the beginning of the book, I think she does kind of maybe blame herself while also being very angry at the people that have caused her like harm and all these things that have happened to her. It's a kind of a two-way thing in her mind. She semi-blames herself, but then also realises it was because of the actions of others. But towards the end, she has this kind of moment where she's like, no, I'm worth way more than what has happened to me. And it's really beautiful. And like I say, I've tabbed it as well because there were just some really lovely passages that helped me with my own like issues with self-esteem. So yeah, it was really nice to go into this with low expectations and come out with like so much more. The next book on my list is another one that again surprised me in the way that it kind of made me see things that happen in life or have happened in my life in a completely different way, and that is Almost Love by Louise O'Neill. So this is the second Louise O'Neill book that I have read and absolutely adored it. It was very difficult to read. This isn't one of the easiest ones to read, especially I would say if you are a female in her like late 20s, because a lot of the things that happen in this book you may have experienced in some way or form, in terms of the main character Sarah, who is not a likeable protagonist, and her relationships with the various men in her life. And yes, it was very, very eye-opening, in that, like I say, it kind of shows you that love and relationships aren't always what they seem. So to give you a bit of context, this follows our main character Sarah, who is in her late 20s, mid to late 20s, and it mainly follows her like relationship with an older man called Matthew. This relationship is very complicated, but in a sort of like lustful way, and Sarah is, to put it plainly, obsessed with Matthew. And then there are other relationships she has throughout the book with other people, and you see the ways in which she kind of, uses people. But it's really not as simple as that. This is a very emotionally complex book, and it's something that I really, really enjoyed. But the reason why I would say this made such an impact on me, it wasn't just because of, like I say, it made me look at some of my past relationships in a completely different way. It was that it sparked something in my brain that made me want to start writing. So this is the book that did that for me. So throughout the year, for some strange reason, I had been coming up with ideas for short stories, and writing them on my phone just in case I needed them at some point. But that lust for writing wasn't quite there yet. It was reading this book that did it for me. There was one particular scene that I just got home and I just had to like write, just to get all of this stuff out of my head. And it was from that moment forward that I thought, you know what, actually these short stories that I've been, saving, these ideas I've been saving on my phone as notes, I do actually want to write them. I feel like it would be very therapeutic for me. So I'm very grateful to this book for opening that door for me. The next book on my list is actually the only non-fiction book on my list this year, which to me is actually very surprising, but it was one that I've been wanting to read for a really long time and finally got round to it in 2023, and it was very eye-opening, and that is The Untethered Soul by Michael A. Singer. I listened to this on audiobook, which I would highly recommend because it is narrated by Michael A. Singer. And again, this is one that's very difficult to explain, but this book basically unpacks where energy and thoughts and emotions all stem from, and how you can be in control of all of those things. It's a very complex non-fiction book, and one that I would probably have to reread at least maybe twice a year for some of the concepts to stick in my mind, because we are just so driven, I guess, in a certain way, in terms of that we live in our brains so often, and we believe our brains and our thoughts are who we are. And yes, you can maybe spend a day realizing that your brain is doing that, but it's very easy to get back into that habit. But one of the things that has really stuck with me from this book is the idea that emotions, how we can basically regulate our own emotions, because for me, I get stressed really easily, especially at work, and throughout this book, Michael A. Singer basically says, just let it go. If you hold on to something that's happening, then that's when it has the ability to like cause you stress or harm or trauma and things like that. So in my head, I now just say, let it go. So the second I realise something at work has happened, it's really, really stressed me out, and I'm sat there and I'm really tense and I'm annoyed and I'm like, oh, I say to myself, let it go, because the only person it is affecting is you. The other person, it's not affected them in any way, shape or form, and if it has, again, that's by their own doing. And it's really helped me. It has helped me in the moment be like, why am I holding on to this? It's actually not like affecting me in the long term. I can just let it go. It's fine. And then I can move on to my next task at work without being crazy stressed. But there are, like I say, quite a few other things in here that I would like to reread it and try and implement in my daily life, because that one thing has already really helped me. And last but not least is a very well-known popular book that I finally got around to reading in 2023, and I'm so glad that I did, but that is The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. So this book has obviously been on my radar for quite some time, as it is a very, very popular book with the book community and wider. The concept has always interested me, and I picked up this secondhand copy in a bookshop in Bangor in Wales when I was there for my niece's graduation. I had since then unhauled it, and then before taking the books to the charity shop at the last minute, fished it out of the bag and put it back on my shelf. And like I say, I'm so glad that I did, because Matt Haig's books, both fiction and non-fiction, just always reach me, or I read them at the perfect time, like when I desperately need them. So again, at some point in the year when I hadn't been doing so great, I was in a reading slump. I was not having a great time. I was looking on my shelves being like, I know reading would really help me right now, but I don't really want to read anything. And obviously this one came calling to me. Another thing that really helped me while I was in a slump is that it's got really short chapters, which we love, and Matt Haig's sort of like simplistic writing, again, when you're in a reading slump, is really helpful. But this book, the concept of this book, is what basically helped me, because this one follows our main character Nora, whose life recently has just been going from bad to worse. If you think you're having a bad day, Nora's having a kind of worse day. It kind of sets the scene with Nora, I think, being fired from work. Her cat gets run over. Lots of just really awful things happen to her in the space of like 8 hours. And then Nora basically wants to end her life. But instead of that, she ends up being transported to the Midnight Library, where she's in this sort of like liminal, not sure if she's alive or dead, and she meets an old librarian who explains to her that the books in this library can allow her to live so many different lives that Nora may have led. So again, in the run-up to this happening, you get sort of snippets of Nora sort of being like, what if me and my brother had carried on with the band, or what if I had pursued the career I always wanted to do in science, and all of these sort of like what ifs. So obviously when Nora is in the Midnight Library, she can pick and choose to see what those lives would have been like. But the thing that I liked most about this was, I think when I got sort of like halfway through, I could kind of see where it was going to end, and that already put like a smile on my face without having finished it yet, because like I say, the mood that I was in, again, I was very much in a sort of what if, like what if I had pursued archaeology and was currently doing archaeology now, and what if this, that and the other, and all these things that like spiral in your mind. So this book kind of helped me explore that in a way, I guess. And then, like I say, knowing how it was going to end and how it did actually end made me feel very grateful for the life that I have. So those are the books that made an impact on me in some way in 2023. I love filming this video, like reflecting on my year and seeing how some of the best books I've read in the year, how they have affected my life. Please let me know in the comments down below the one book that really made an impact on you in 2023, so I can add it to my want to read list. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I cannot wait to see you in my next video. See you then! Bye!